Amalek trying to take Sarah from Abraham in the Genesis account, but we don't get the full discourse such as we get in our book of Abraham. So let me talk a little bit about that with you. And of course, the main idea here is this rivalry of Pharaoh and as the king and Abraham. Now, I was listening, interestingly, to Hugh Nibley's Book of Mormon lectures last night on my bike ride. I like to ride bike and listen to talk tapes, and he talks about this theme of the prophet who has a showdown, but he has to disguise himself first. With Abinadi the prophet, he went among the people in disguise in the Book of Mormon, and then he reads in the New Testament account just before the triumphal entry. Jesus tells his disciples, you go ahead and go into Jerusalem. I'm not going to go into Jerusalem. And then he actually follows them in, and he went among the people, and they didn't recognize who he was. And he was just kind of paying attention. He was checking out the situation. Because, of course, he was in rivalry with the Pharisees and the scribes and the Sadducees and everyone in Jerusalem. And everyone was speculating, is he going to show up? Is he going to come? And all that jazz. And this same idea of this rivalry between quite frankly, it's a basic mythological theme the world over, the fight between light and dark. Yeah, you get that in Genesis 1:1 in the creation. God created the light and the darkness could not comprehend it, and so on and so forth. Well, this idea is what Nibley is talking about. I'm on page 77 now in his first edition of Abraham in Egypt, my very worn out copy here. Oh my, I'm going to have to tape this thing back together. It's going to fall apart in my hands. The main point is because each of the antagonists claim to have the true priesthood. And with priesthood, now remember, in ancient times, with priesthood came the kingship. And so this was a big deal to Pharaoh anyway. Abraham wasn't necessarily aspiring to the office, but he had the priesthood. Pharaoh, of course, and this comes out in the literature, in the Apocalypse, in the Testament of Abraham's, and the prophets and the apostles. There's a great and terrible monarch who feels his divinity is threatened, and his dominion is challenged by an emissary of the true God. And so, of course, you're going to have a battle. You're going to have a fight, a stichomathia, like we have in our wrestling contests on TV these days. And the showdown comes off in the Battle of the Magicians. And immediately you think of Moses and Pharaoh as well. I just read this was a couple weeks ago actually, in the Genesis account in Hebrew of the rivalry between Moses and Pharaoh and the plagues that kept going on Egypt. And how stubborn and how idiotic and how bullheaded Pharaoh kept being, even though his entire country was completely wiped out by the true priesthood of Moses. Pharaoh would not let Israel go. He was his hard-headed, his adamantine desire to just keep Israel so he could make money just absolutely wiped his country out. And of course, that's what always happens. And this is the theme in Egypt as well. The divinity of Pharaoh was perpetually in question. He says that on page 78. Now, Nibley shows several different, he has parallel columns here from the Book of Abraham, and then several of the various Egyptological texts that have been translated. And I'm not going to go through all of these. There's quite a few pages. There's, let's see here. It takes it all the way to page 90. You got 10 pages of parallels in column. The main theme of Abraham. Now, this is what I read in the first Psalm just now. The main theme of Abraham 1 and 2. I was a seeker after righteousness, and I wanted to find greater happiness and peace and rest for me. He had great knowledge. He had great righteousness, but he didn't stop. He kept going. He wanted greater happiness, peace, and rest for me. And he says, I sought for the blessings of the fathers. And in his Egyptian parallel, page 79, right up on the top, a solicitous son does what is pleasing, that is aket. It means advantageous to his fathers who begot him. endowing rites, festivals, for they are the gods who created his perfection, his nepheru. See, I sought the blessings of the fathers. And Abraham continues, and I sought the right whereunto I should be ordained to administer the same blessings, a rightful heir, I having been myself a follower of righteousness. You see, this is his attitude. It's not self-aggrandizement at all. He wants these things so that he can turn around and share them with everyone else. And this is the famous rabbinical story that always cracked that broke Hugh Nibley up when Abraham, in that very, very hot day, in the heat of the day. Now, the German translation, I just read this last week also. The German translation, this is very interesting because it says it is the hochstest talk. It's the hottest part of the day. It's an inferno out there. And Abraham tries and tries and tries to go out into that inferno and try to find some poor stranger that he can bring in and comfort and share food and water with and bless. And he himself, old and sick, goes out into that fiery inferno, as Nibley puts it. And then when he comes back, of course, there's the three men. And Abraham receives his greatest blessing because he had the attitude of helping others. He performed charity. Very interesting story. Well, anyway, so this is his idea of the acquiring, the possession of this great light and knowledge and power and the blessings of the priesthood, not to make himself better than everyone else, but so that he could turn around and serve others. It's a very interesting story, desiring also to be one who possessed great knowledge and to possess a greater knowledge. A prince of peace. It says that on page 81. His Egyptian text here, the chiefs of upper retinue, that is Canaan, who knew not Egypt since the time of God, crave peace from his majesty. There shall be no rebels in thy time, but every land shall be in peace. See, it's the same theme. People want peace. For crying out loud, what use of war? Abraham did not deliberately go out on offensive wars to acquire gain. That is the way of the wicked, according to the first Psalm. So anyway, going on. And this is a good one too. On the bottom of page 83 here, I'm skipping a couple of pages, Abraham being a high priest. Plato in the Politics says, in Egypt, it is not possible for a king to rule without the priesthood. And Plutarch on Isis, he says, the king officiates at Heliopolis in the capacity of a priest. So you can see this rivalry here. It's pretty big stuff. Abraham claims, I'm on page 85 now, Abraham claims to hold the right belonging to the fathers. It was conferred upon me from the fathers. It came down from the fathers. Now the Egyptian parallel, very interesting because I have this study, reads thus. It says, I give to thee the throne of Geb. The throne of Geb, this is the primal earth father. This is actually, the throne of Geb is the earth. Actually, what the pharaohs were giving was the acquisition of the land of Egypt, their own nation. They controlled the entire country here. I give to thee the throne of Geb, and the office of Atum. That's A-T-U-M. And remember the blessings of the fathers. Nibley says, compare the name Adam in the Bible. I, that is Ammon, the father of the gods, give to thee my seat of inheritance under me. I am thy beloved father who establishes thy authority, the Sa, who confirms thy titles. In the pyramid texts, the right to rule is established by formal demonstration of patriarchal descent from Geb. See, so this is Abraham's idea also. It was conferred upon me from the fathers. It came down from the fathers. You can see how this rivalry is set up, because the Egyptians claim to get it from the fathers also, and they call it the throne